Well, thanks for joining me today, Maddie.
Absolutely. Thanks.
I really appreciate you giving us a bit of a tour of the space. My first question for you is, could you give our audience a bit of a history of Custom Woolen Mills and how the business came to be?
Sure. So Custom Woolen Mills is an amalgamation of two historical woolen mills that existed in Western Canada. One that was from Sifton, Manitoba, and one from McGrath, Alberta. And it came to be here because in the 1970s, my parents were really interested in hand weaving and textile arts and stuff. My mom was really involved at what is now the Leighton Art Centre. A student of my dad's gifted them some wool from their farm, and it ended up being like a whole truckload. And so they went on this adventure of finding out where you could get wool processed and how to go about doing that. And it turned out that the only places left were these two mills, and they were shutting down. The owners were in their 70s and didn't have anyone that was going to take them over. And so my parents brought that equipment together here, and it became Custom Woolen Mills.
And this mill is quite unique because you're using a lot of the traditional equipment, or that was used way back when. Why was that done? Like, I'm assuming that was done on purpose.
Yeah, well, kind of on purpose and kind of just that's how it came about. Yeah, the equipment is from the late 1800s and early 1900s, most of it. And the processes are actually quite similar to modern processing, but the scale is different. So our machines are a lot smaller than you would get new equipment to be. And that's actually been quite beneficial for us because the equipment is small enough that we can offer custom processing to individual farms. So they can bring their wool here. We process it into yarn or wool-filled bedding for them. Or machine knit socks, and then they can take it and direct market it to their consumers. So a lot of farms have farmers like farm market stalls or their own little shops on the farm. Some are involved in yarn shops across Canada, and so that's just a different revenue option for their farm.
Yeah, and when we drove in, we saw a couple of the sheep and your llama, Rodney.
Reuben.
Reuben.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Reuben.
Yeah.
And do you actually keep those sheep for wool, or where do you get most of your wool from?
So the reason we have those particular sheep is because they grow very beautiful wool. But we only have 10 of them, and they're kind of our mascots. So they're representative sheep, but we actually buy most of our wool direct from farms here in Alberta, Saskatchewan, a little bit in Manitoba, and a little bit in BC. Yeah, we process about 300 pounds of raw fibre a day. And so that's the wool of roughly, I'm just trying to think, I haven't done the math offhand, but you get about 8 pounds per fleece.
Oh, okay, cool.
So yeah, so we don't keep sheep to supply ourselves, but
just as mascots.
Yeah.
And then you also do a bit of processing for alpaca and llama as well.
Yeah, we can do alpaca, llama. We do some bison fiber. We do mohair, which is from Angora goats. Those are kind of the main other ones that we do.
And what are some of the biggest misconceptions you think that people have about wool or clothing in general?
Well, I don't think a lot of people spend too much time thinking about their clothing and its origins. So I don't think many people think of their clothing as an agricultural product necessarily. And wool is definitely an agricultural product. Cotton is an agricultural product, hemp. All the natural fibers, really. And with wool, I think one of the biggest misconceptions is people think it's too hard to care for. And really, it can be the opposite. Like, you barely have to care for it as long as you're doing the right, simple thing. And
maybe people don't realize too that wool has a lot of intrinsic properties, like being able, you mentioned sleeping bags that you guys do here.
Yeah.
I don't know if people realize that wool is a really good insulator.
Oh, it's an excellent insulator. Yeah, it's one of the best natural fibers. It is still warm even when it's wet. So sleeping bags, our sleeping bags that we make are really excellent in damp conditions. So on boats or anywhere that, like, they're heavy, but they are really good anywhere that you're kind of in adverse conditions where something like down or synthetics would just be cold.
So once you have the raw wool, can you step me through or talk me through some of the steps in the process to going from raw wool to a finished yarn?
Sure. So the first step is sorting the wool. So we go through it by hand and grade it for the characteristics of the wool, whether it's soft or coarse or shiny, and then we send it through our wash system, which just uses hot soapy water to remove the barnyard dirt and the lanolin, which is a natural like greasy, waxy thing that sheep create. And then we rinse it with water and dry it. So we've got the grease washed out of the wool and it's nice and clean. Then we card it, which is basically brushing the fibers to organize them. And then from there we can spin it. So that's putting twist into the fiber, which gives it strength. And then once you have a spun yarn, you can knit with it, or that's what you weave with. You can felt wool, which is intentionally shrinking it from any of those stages, but also just from the carded stage. Yeah. And then we also put wool into bedding, like I mentioned, so layers of carded wool between fabric and quilt it.
Yeah, and you were mentioning when we looked at the washing process that it's a 2-stage wash that you do?
Yeah, we do a 2-stage wash. So one wash in hot soapy water. We use a plant-based, readily biodegradable soap, and then it goes through hot rinse water, and then we put it in a spinner where we do a second rinse with fresh water and then spin as much water as we can out, and we actually recycle all that water backwards through the system.
And for the chemical dyes that you use, how do you, I guess, dispose of the wastewater from that? So
for all of our wastewater here at the mill, we have evaporation lagoons. So they're clay-lined lagoons that hold the contaminants and then let the water evaporate out. And then eventually you have to dredge those and dispose of the contaminated, like, soil byproduct, basically.
When we're talking about the equipment that you use here and it being so traditional, like you were talking about equipment that's from the late 1800s or early 1900s, like, how do you have to care for that machine maybe differently than, say, a bigger, more industrial type mill?
I guess the biggest difference is that parts aren't readily available. So we still care for it in a similar way. We have a millwright that we make sure that it's running properly, the gauging is correct, and when you have to fix something, if it's not a standard part that you can get kind of in modern times, then you have to get more creative and build parts or fix them, like fix instead of replace, that kind of thing. So it is challenging, and it requires more creativity perhaps on the part of our millwrights, but
well, and I think you probably make your maintenance very top of mind every single day.
Yeah, definitely.
And as far as like the unique items that you make here, we saw some of them and we talked about sleeping bags. I know you were showing us kind of the sock, where you knit the socks. Are there any other items that maybe people would be surprised about that are made of wool?
Ooh. Offhand, I can't think of any specific but it's probably because nothing surprises me about it because I grew up with it. So I don't know.
I mean, you have an amazing showroom and people should come and visit and check it out and see all the different knitted items. And I really appreciate that you have like the patterns and the little kits so people can knit their own stuff. Yeah,
a lot of our shop here is geared toward crafters, like hand workers. But then we do have some finished items and our machine knit socks and our wool filled bedding that anyone can enjoy. Yeah.
And so for Fashion Revolution Week this year, the theme is Money, Fashion, Power. I'm just wondering how that might apply to your business. I know that you treat a lot of your staff like they're probably long-term staff that have been almost a part of your family for a long time. Do you mind talking a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, well, so we exist here in our community, and we live here, we spend our money here. These are our friends and neighbors that we're working with. And there are friends and neighbors that we're selling product to, and that's who we're buying the wool from. And so in terms of money and power, we are in our own little economic ecosystem. And I think as much as you can do that, that does put power in the hands of your community. And I think that's important.
And your business has really been centered around this traditional craft and using the traditional machines from ages ago. Do you see your business changing any in the future?
No, not really. We're not looking to expand really or anything. We like our life like this, and like change always, kind of, because we do want to grow and you don't want to be stagnant.
You have to adapt.
And you have to adapt to different markets and we try to adapt. We do adapt new technology in terms of when something becomes more sustainable, or if like different ways to deal with water and different ways to deal with energy and that kind of thing. And so we do adapt that technology. But in terms of the scale of our equipment and the way we do business, I don't think we'll be changing a huge amount.
What are your hopes for the future for your company, your employees in general? Yeah, for the future, I guess I hope to see more of the same, and I hope that more people think about conversations like this. We hope to increasingly stay on top of environmental initiatives because those are so connected to social justice as well. Like, you can't talk about environmental stewardship and not also be talking about the people behind it and the environments that people around the world live in. And so for our business, environmental stewardship is something that we're always thinking about in terms of leaving this place good for the next generations. Awesome.
Yeah.
So if people want to find you or come out, check out your shop, or even just get a bit of a tour, you said there's a self-guided tour that people can take. Mm-hmm. How would they get to you?
So yeah, we are now open again for self-guided tours, and we'll look at doing some guided tours in the summer. But for now, people are welcome to come out to visit us. We are about an hour northeast of Calgary. We have a website, www.customwoolenmills.com, where we list all the information about our business, and we have an online store and also information about coming out to tour. We have our little shop here where we're selling the things that we make in the mill. And if people want to come out, there's lots of other really awesome little businesses in the towns near us that you can go get food or other locally made products and make a day of it if you're coming for a visit.
Great. Well, thank you so much for interviewing with us today for Fashion Revolution Week. And yeah, it's been such a great experience getting to see the processes and visit with you and pick your brain a little bit.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this, and it's been a pleasure showing you around.